This is the TRM Atom. Now you might reasonably ask, you've already reviewed the TRM Atom. Why is the Atom back on your table? You've got your Atom here. You quite enjoy it. You still enjoy it. You said it was one of your favorite knives. It still is. This is a more special TRM Atom. This is one of the versions that was hand ground by Mike Erie, most often known for hand grinding a lot of Protex knives, in Magna Cut with the new thumb studs. This is going to be a little bit of a quicker review, but I'm going to look at whether the Atom stands up in this higher end configuration or whether we should really stick with the basic Atom. So again, because this is a re-review and I've already reviewed the Atom, I'm not going to go through my full overview, blade, handle, all that sort of stuff. Fundamentally, this is still a TRM Atom. What I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try to post this the night before the last drop of these comes up. I'm going to talk about the differences between this and the Atom that most of us know and love, which is the grind here. I'll talk a little bit about the scales. I'll talk about this new thumb stud, and then I'll also talk about how the Atom feels at the higher price point they're charging for this and how well it stands up to the competition in that, at that price point in that area. Because everybody pretty much agrees by this point that your basic Atom, which is around 200 bucks, is one of the best around $200 knives that you can get on the market. This one, and let's get into the review here, this is a $400 knife. So what are the differences between this and your standard Atom? There are three, really. First, you got your contoured carbon fiber scales. These are, you can often get these scales from TRM. It's not like they're exclusive to these Mike Erie hand ground versions. But these scales here, they are contoured. They've got a light texturing. These mill lines are both more visible and more tactile on the carbon fiber than they are in something like the G10. This is also contoured G10, but these feel a little bit more smooth than this. They also feel just a little more proud in these newer scales than they did on some of the older contoured ones. So the fact is, you can get these carbon fiber scales for 100 bucks plus or minus. I think they're a little bit less than 100 from TRM. And I will tell you right now, these scales are a serious upgrade. The Atom really does well when it is this lightweight, in this very light form factor, because you've got a blade here that weighs pretty much nothing. The whole thing just feels so insanely light in the hand. And on top of that, with these light handles, the whole knife feels immaculately balanced. Your balance point is right, just a little bit behind the pivot. It's right where your middle finger lands. This thing feels so natural and effortless in the hand with these carbon fiber scales. Part of the reason I don't love titanium scales on the TRM Atom is it brings the balance of the handle further back. And it just makes it feel more handle heavy, which isn't something you want on a light, slicey knife like this. So these carbon fiber scales, which came with the knife when I purchased it, but which you can get from TRM otherwise, are a hard yes from me. They look great, as you've heard me say in other reviews. There are few finishes I like more than woven carbon fiber contoured, where you get sort of that natural emergent design here. You can see the cross section there, no voids in the carbon fiber. It just looks really nice, it shimmers really nice, and the micro milling that they have does give a little bit of texture so it's not slick. It's great. The Atom in general remains a fantastic knife design. It remains one of the best knife designs out there. This is the epitome of a well-designed neutral handle. You've got your front finger choil right here. This pinch grip, there's no jimping anywhere, but you get your finger right in there, very secure, not really any risk of running up on the blade. The way this swells toward the back, especially with these contoured scales, fits nicely into your palm. This big old choil here, great space for your middle finger. Great little curve for your back fingers to land on. This fills the palm nicely, super secure in the hand. A pinch grip works really, really well. When you pinch it, this part goes right into your palm. It's super slim when it's folded up. The blade folds very neatly into the handle. It's light, it's thin, it's just, I'm not going to belabor the point on the Atom. We've all seen plenty of reviews on the Atom. If you're looking for a review of the Atom, go back to my full review of it. Everything that was exceptional about the Atom when I reviewed it a few months ago remains exceptional today, and it is simply one of the best knives on the market. Before we get to the grind, let's talk about this thumb stud. One of the few criticisms that people have had about the Atom historically, and about TRMs in general, is these thumb studs. TRM choose a very, let's call it, unique design for their thumb stud, where unlike somebody like a Chris Reeve, where it's stepped like that, or I don't know where my Demcos went, let's take the tactile Chupacabra here, which isn't a great thumb stud, by the way, but it's sort of domed here, and it's got a couple of ridges. The Atom thumb stud is a flat dome with a lip there. And when it's closed, basically the only way, your finger will skate right off the top. There's nothing that is grabbing onto it here. The only way to really open this is to get your finger under that lip, have that lip bite into your thumb, and flick it out. Once you get used to it, it's fine. I've never had an issue with it, but I see why they do it, because it looks nice. It makes this whole knife look and feel very sterile, very sleek. It fits the aesthetic they're going for. But a lot of people really don't like this thumb stud. A lot of people find it very uncomfortable. I've even seen some people that have gone and put, TI connector thumb studs, stuff like that on here. This thumb stud, which is basically a more traditional stepped version. This is similar to what you'll see on some Demcos and things like that. This might even be a third-party thumb stud. I know I've seen something very similar to this stud before, I just can't place it. This is a very good thumb stud. Your thumb goes very naturally onto those steps. The placement of the thumb stud has always been quite good. Most of your force is perpendicular to the axis between the pivot and the stud. The detent is it's a medium detent. It's not heavy, not light. And now, rather than having to sort of scoop your thumb under, the move you always kind of had to do, eventually you do it subconsciously, is rather than just coming down onto it, you have to come sort of under, scoop under to get to that lip and pop it out. This one here, more like just most knives, you can just slam your thumb on there, flick it out, and it flicks out very nicely, very easily. This stud, which we've seen on the Shadow, is absolutely an improvement over the previous one. Aesthetically, I don't even like it all that much less. I do prefer the other one just a little bit, but it's not an aesthetic negative, and it's much easier to use. So it looks like TRM is adding this thumb stud on all of their knives coming up. The new batch of Neutron seems to still be using the old thumb stud, but it's a very good thumb stud. And honestly, it's, especially if you really like the Neutron and the Atom, I think that thumb stud is enough an upgrade that it is potentially worth getting a new one, especially if you're one of those people that didn't like the old thumb stud designs, just because it is the only deployment method, and so it's a pretty big deal for a knife like this. So, thumb stud, definite upgrade. These particular scales, definitely an upgrade, though not exclusive to this collaboration. But now, let's go to the thing that's special about this one, and the reason it's $400, because honestly, if you get this knife, and they're not charging any more for the thumb stud, and you get these scales on it, that's probably about a $300 knife instead of a $400 knife. To just get carbon fiber instead of the stock Contour G10 scales. It's probably even in the high 200s. But the real reason is the grind. Let's pull these up together. So most TRMs are flat ground. This is your typical TRM. And it is a flat grind from the back of this stock, which is 90 thousandths, so thin stock to begin with, flat down to the edge. Now, as I've often said about TRMs, they don't grind their knives with that much of a steep flat grind. This is a pretty shallow flat grind. So it's thin behind the edge just because the stock is so thin and it's tall, but it's not screamingly sharp behind the edge. And, they're doing that because these are meant to be users. You wouldn't want a hyper sharp edge because that'd easily become a fragile edge. This one, actually, no, this is still a factory edge. I haven't had to resharpen this one yet because the TRM, and it comes sharp. But the cutting performance is really good. TRMs are notorious for that. That's because of the thin blade stock and the tall grind. It's not because they have an exceptionally steep flat grind or that anything about this flat grind is aggressive or interesting. In fact, it's very shallow. You can see even in how subtle that transition is between the flat and the grind, how relatively shallow that flat grind is. This one is Hand Hollow Ground by Mike Erie. Now, you can even see on that little, on the transition from the flat down to the blade, and you can feel it, or down to the grind, you can feel that that is a steeper transition, and you can see that that is a steeper transition. He also brought the plunge back a little bit further, and he started his grind just a little bit higher. You can see, you know, this flat breaks down here. The flat breaks a little bit further back on your flat ground version. The plunge is further back. The edge is about the same. Perfectly even on both sides. Mike Erie, of course, knows what he's doing. But this grind here, TRM says it's not thinner behind the edge. But I will tell you in my experience, and actually if you look at it, if anything, the flat grind here on the right looks thinner behind the edge than the hollow ground here on the left if you're just looking at the base of the blade like this. But I will tell you, putting this hollow grind on the Atom compared to this flat ground one, the Atom with a flat grind here is an extremely good slicer. There is no cutting task that I don't enjoy using the Atom for, and frankly, it's one of my desert island knives. If you told me I had to bring my collection down to 2 or 3 knives, the Atom would be in there. But with this hollow grind, this thing becomes a supreme slicer. This is right out of the box, without me sharpening it and putting my own edge on it. This is probably the sharpest out of the box knife I have ever handled, barring some customs. Like, and you're not going to compete with like a John Gray custom or something like that. This grind, just the way that, and like a hollow grind, it's going to drop more up here and then flatten out down here because it's curved, it's not flat. It looks nicer. It cuts nicer. It feels nicer to cut through material. And I think a lot of that is because with a hollow grind like this, it is, unlike a flat grind that evenly progresses toward that edge, with a hollow grind, you can feel it is, basically this part down here feels flat. It feels like the whole blade is flat. And then you feel it curve as you get there. Most cuts, I'm only using this bottom part of the blade. And there, as I'm slicing through stuff, it's basically cutting with the thickness of the edge the whole way back. And so even though it's a little thicker behind the edge, everything I use this for, whether it's cardboard, because you know cardboard, it's going to separate, and it's probably going to separate past the edges of the blade with a blade stock this thin. Not the case we got 190,000 blade stock, but with 90,000 like this, the edge is going to split the cardboard, it's going to split past it. On something like plant material, this thing was amazing in the garden, just sliced through everything. With this hollow grind and how sharp, how thin it brings the area just behind the edge, this is probably the most enjoyable knife to use out of the box that I have ever had. Again, barring a couple very high-end customs, and we're talking, you know, those are like $1,000 knives. Barring those couple exceptions, this is probably my favorite knife to use directly out of the box, and I would expect it to get even better if I were to put my own edge on it. So that brings us to the question, which is, you know, let's say, forget Mike Erie hollow grinding them. Let's say that, you know, TRM, and this is more philosophical because frankly, there's going to be 45 of these in the market. You're not going to have much of a chance to get one of these. And the fact is, if you're here for the answer to the question, 15 minutes in, you're still here. You answer the question, if I get a chance at $400 to get one of these Mike Erie Hollow Ground Atoms, should I? I will say it's basically a 3-part test. Do you already know and love the TRM Atom? Because it should not be your first TRM Atom, because just get one for $170, try out on the secondary market, just try out the model and see if you like it. But if you already know you like the TRM Atom, if you're the sort of person that buys $400 knives in general, and if you are willing to pay a premium for going from very, very good performance to exceptional performance, especially if you were going to buy the carbon fiber scales anyway, I would say hell yes. The fact is, I kind of got this as a flyer. I thought that I would probably sell it pretty quickly because I don't buy that many knives in this price range anymore. But the performance you get out of this Mike Erie Hollow Grind is so phenomenal that it's the rare knife that's actually even better as a performer than my basic TRM Atom. And so if you are one of those people and you get a chance to get this, get it. You will get more use out of this knife, more utility out of this knife with these scales, with this grind, than anything else you're going to pay $400 for. If I compare this to some other great slicey knives, if I compare this to the Maverick is a really, really good slicer. The Maverick is great to use. The Maverick is a $300 knife. This one feels nicer, feels better than the Maverick, and it's better to use than the Maverick. Same blade stock. Obviously a different mechanism. This is a bar lock, but this one feels better than the Maverick. I compare it to, I've got my Benchmade tagged out here. Very slicey, still not as slicey as the Atom with the hollow grind on it, despite having a nice tall grind, and this actually has a previous owner's edge on it. Very good to use, not as light, not as ergonomically good, just not as enjoyable to use as this one. Is this knife, as it's configured here, $200 better than your base TRM Atom? Objectively, no. This is for collectors. This is for people who are enthusiastic about the Atom. But if you are somebody who loves the Atom, and there are plenty of those people out there, and you get a chance to get one of these, it's awesome. This is the Atom taken to its zenith. This is the peak of the Atom. Put it another way. If you're telling me you have a choice between getting one of these hollow grind ones or getting an Atom with lizard skin titanium scales, which comes to about the same price, all day I am going to direct you to a hollow ground version with carbon fiber scales. Because this thing is just as schwanky, just as cool, and the performance is completely off the charts. Last thing I'll note, which I skipped over earlier, and I don't know if this has something to do with Mike Erie or if it just has to do with the fact that they've been tuning these a little better. So, my Atom here, this is one of my users. The action is smooth. It's basically like Sabenda smooth. It pops open, but it's a controlled close, a controlled open. This guy here basically shakes shut. It's a lighter detent, and it will, if I wanted to, not under the camera, I can get this thing to just about shake shut. I need to coach it. I need to push it. I can't find that word. Coax it toward the very bottom. But the action on this one, man, that thumb says good, is even better than on my standard Atom, on top of all the other benefits. And so that ends us with, if you've got $400, if you're the sort of person that has $400 burning a hole in your pocket, that regularly spends $400 on knives, and you want to know, is this $400 knife worth it? What I can tell you is I am pretty confident in saying there is not a knife on the market that you are going to get more cutting performance out of at $400 than this one right here, than a hollow ground TRM Atom. And I would love for TRM to find a way to start putting production hollow grinds on their knives, even if they had to charge a $50, $75 premium on it, because the way the market has moved up and TRM has kept their prices pretty standard, honestly, I think the TRM Atom, even though it's a fantastic buy at $200 for the stock one, or $200 and change, it would be an incredible buy at $300 with, obviously you're not going to get a custom hollow grind, but with a hollow grind on all of them, Insanely good would be a market beater with a hollow grind at $300, just like the original was a market beater at $200 with a flat grind when it came out. You do get more performance, you do feel it, and this configuration here, you know, knock $50 off if it's not custom, make this a production hollow grind. Say $350 for this configuration, hollow ground blade, contoured carbon fiber scales. If you tell me I've got to spend $350 on a knife that I'm actually going to use, I actually can't think of anything on the market that I would prefer to get over this. This is going to stay in the collection for a while unless I have financial strain that forces me to liquidate. And I'm just really, really impressed by what TRM has done here. They have brought the best out of the Atom. And if you like TRM and you like the Atom, these versions are worth chasing down. Again, I'm pretty sure it's only 3 batches of 15 apiece. You're going to have to watch Blade forums or Reddit Knife Swap or something like that to try to catch one. People don't seem to be marking these up. They seem to be selling them for about what they paid retail, which is about $400 to $450, depending on what scales you get. Don't get the stupid lizard titanium ones that throw the balance off and make this a $500 knife. As a heavier $500 knife, the entire value proposition just gets thrown off. This is meant to be light, it's meant to be sleek, it's meant to be easy in the pocket, easy in the hand, have that nice lightweight balance. If you want a titanium knife, get something that's not a TRM Atom. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, that's my conclusion here. Is this worth chasing down? If you like the Atom, absolutely, because this is noticeably better than your stock Atom. And honestly, I think it's probably one of the better $400 knives on the market, and I think it might be the best user, even at $400 on the market. I love my Sebenza, but the Sebenza is really trying to do a different thing. This thing is meant for more hard use. It can cut well. I'm not going to say this is a better knife than the Sebenza, because it's trying to do a completely different thing than the Sebenza, but it's up there in that top echelon of things that are as good as the Sebenza. That's my conclusion here. Track one down if you can. I think you'll really love it. I have been so impressed by this thing since I got it, and impressed enough that it was worth making another video, 20 minutes long, about a knife that I have already reviewed. Hope you found this helpful. Hope this gives you some interest and incentive to track one down, because it's a very, very cool knife. Hope I'll see you around again soon. Have a good one.